Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I am doing my February historical events video. For February I chose February 11th, which is when Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27, almost 28 years, 18 of which he spent on Robben Island. He spent those years in prison as a political prisoner. He was a colored man during apartheid who was a very large part of the ANC, or the African National Congress, and because of that the white leaders of apartheid really did not like him, so they sent him to prison because that's what you do with political opponents during apartheid. Anyway, I have several books here about Mandela, South Africa, and Southern Africa in general, so let's get started. The first one seems fairly obvious, and I have read this one. I read it before I went to South Africa because I thought if I was going to South Africa I really should have read this book, and that is A Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. This book covers his entire life up until when he is released from prison, and the title comes from the walk from the guard post or the gate in the last prison he served to the public road. It's not a very long stretch. I went there as well, but I could understand vaguely how that could be the longest walk of your life. This is a really good book. It has so much information in it. It's an autobiography, and it just really delves into his ideas clearly and his life while giving you a picture of what apartheid was like, specifically for him and his family. The next one is a historical fiction by one of my favorite authors, Wilbur Smith, and that is Blue Horizon. This one follows the Courtney family, which I've mentioned briefly. He has an entire series based on the Courtney family during different generations. This one occurs during the 18th century, and they always end up back in Africa, specifically South Africa somehow. I haven't read this book, but I have read other installments in the Courtney series and loved them, so I have no doubts whatsoever that I will absolutely adore this book as well. The next one probably is not quite as interesting to you as it is to me, but that is Comparative Constitutional Law, South African Cases and Materials in a Global Context by Mark Kende. This book is just basically a compilation of South African cases along with cases from many other countries such as Italy, Great Britain, and the United States. As he specifically talks about the Constitution. South Africa's Constitution was written in 1996, ratified in 1997 by the South African population. It's an incredibly long constitution, but it's also incredibly in-depth because of that. It's fascinating to read these cases, and I got to write a paper about what the Constitution and the rights that it guarantees meant to Indigenous populations in South Africa. This book was an incredible help. I also got to interview Mark Kende for one of my papers, which had my heart pounding like nobody's business, but this book is very simple, very accessible, considering it's a law book. Next I have We Are the Poors by Ashwin Desai. This is just a very short, maybe 100 pages or so, book about being the poor in South Africa, specifically just after apartheid. It talks about the water shortages, which apparently they're currently going through again, but it talks about the water shortages and how the non-white people were treated during this time. It's just a very eye-opening read, and like I said, very short, very accessible as well. Next, I have African Women, 3 Generations by Mark Mathebone. I have not read this one. I bought it for one of my other papers, but did not have time to read it because I tend to compile too many sources for me to realistically read while writing a paper. But this one discusses 3 generations of women in apartheid South Africa, and I think a little bit after that. I am really excited to read this because, if you can't tell, I have a fair number of books about apartheid in South Africa, and I'm just very eager to learn about what it was like for women, because there's not a lot of books that I have about women's role in apartheid specifically. And the last book I have is Bitter Harvest, Zimbabwe and the Aftermath of its Independence by Ian Smith. This one is apparently a memoir of Ian Smith, who was a very influential leader in Zimbabwe, which was originally Rhodesia. I don't know much about Zimbabwe beyond the fact that it's collapsed and kind of come back multiple times and is not doing so hot right now. because of that, I am very excited to read this and figure out what he thought was going on and how he faced it, and learn more about Zimbabwe just in general. Those are all of my release from prison for Mandela books. Like I said, not all of them are directly related to Mandela, but they all relate to Southern Africa, and many of them specifically to South Africa. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up down below, and if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button down below. As always, I will leave my Goodreads link down below if you want to check out what else I read. That's all I got though, so until another video, bye!